How's it going, Lucy fans? Welcome to my no spoilers review for Lucifer Season 6. And this is honestly very strange for me to make because it's like, oh, that's it. That's it. It's over. And I just rewatched the finale of the series finale. And it's just, yeah, it's really something to comprehend now, just talking to the camera, and also just another thing, like, it's so hard to talk about this, I feel, without giving anything away. And do not worry, though, what I want to do here, and if you're new to this channel, what I normally do with no spoiler reviews is I prefer to kind of go from the top of my head, to give kind of raw, unfiltered thoughts and impressions, because that's what a no spoiler review is all about. I'm not going to go into details and ruin things for you, but just give you a true vibe, my takeaway as a fellow Lucy fan. And you guys know, I really love this show, and first and foremost, I want to say, not that I think anyone from the show is going to be watching this video, but it has been a fantastic series. That's something that doesn't really need to be stated, considering the revival of this show through and through the years. It's crazy that we got here, and it most definitely deserved it. And with that being said, what is that final season like? Season 6. And it's kind of a strange feeling right now, just going right off the bat. I've kind of got this feeling of sadness, fulfillment, you could say, a whole bunch of wholesomeness, because obviously with the final season, you're gonna expect goodbyes. It's a farewell season, and my god, does it get into that, and you'll be crying. Like, I definitely got into tears on multiple occasions. But one of the biggest things I will ask myself is, what would you as a fan want to know? And initially that is, does this season end Lucifer in a farewell way that the fans would like it to? And ultimately, in one word, I will say yes. Now, I will revisit that question sometime in this review. One thing I have to give an applause to with the trailer is that there's going to be so many surprises coming your way that they don't even include in the trailer, and that's something I'm very, very grateful for. But let's start off on, you know, the season as a whole. This season does a good job at kind of just letting everything go gently, but also packing some real gut punches along the way. And I think the showrunners have kind of said that, and that's something they've stuck to for a long time, and that they don't always want to tear Lucifer and Chloe apart anymore. It's not so much about that, because this season we know they're together, and that's a great thing. And from the trailer, initially it's about Lucifer kind of trying to come to terms with, oh crap, as of the end of 5B, I need to be God now. And it is kind of him learning his way into that and trying to reconcile with that requirement that he is kind of low-key committed to at the end of last season. As Amenadiel says in the trailer, it's time for you to assume your place on Father's throne, but we clearly see Lucifer in the trailer in Linda's office saying, the world has no God, clearly I belong on this couch. So, you know, following suit with the trailer, that is definitely an arc that is consistent throughout more or less the whole season, and it's interesting to see how that cooks along with it being the final season and the police kind of procedural stuff, because as you know, Chloe isn't a detective anymore. But it is interesting in how they still manage to weave little mysteries in there. For example, the very trailer that we've got for Lucifer Season 6 opens up with, you know, Carol writing down notes and Lucifer being interviewed. So like that's still very much so in there, but obviously when you're closing a season, Lucifer's on his way to becoming God, Chloe is his consultant now and things like that. It definitely adds a new vibe to this season, which is different to prior seasons, and it also feels like Chloe is has a bit of a different role this season as to what we're used to, since clearly she's not in that same role. But with everything they have to tackle, I don't think that damages the show in any way this season, because with all of that context in mind, from where the characters got to this point, from the actions of last season, such as Chloe not being a cop anymore, there's a lot for them to navigate with Lucifer becoming God, and also, you know, the apocalypse is nigh, with Ella saying that in the trailer. That's cooking in the background. But what I will say is, you know, it's kind of intermittently woven throughout the season. When you're going into Lucifer Season 6, you kind of expect peak Lucifer. And do you get that? Most certainly. Like, you still get all of the highlighting colors of the rainbow that is the DNA that makes up the Lucifer show. So clearly with Lucifer trying to come to terms with the fact that he has to go and be God and stuff, this show's theme throughout the seasons has been a lot about identity, with Lucifer's growth through the therapy session, sessions, him learning more about himself, dear old dad, and what that means. It came out in love for Chloe. We finally got past that point. And I'm not trying to say, by the way, that, oh, the final season's just going to tackle Lucifer, like, trying to understand himself again. Like, oh, really? We've been there? No, it's not so much about that. This is also on a whole other level now. And especially when you have the new Angel thrown into the mix, it definitely complicates things. And one thing I do want to say about Rory's character, something I was kind of apprehensive to going in, was that, oh, you know, like, really? Like, you know, we're in the final season now. Surely it should be about kind of farewells and Lucifer becoming God. And, like, really? We're just going to have another antagonist come in and be like, oh, I want to destroy Lucifer Morningstar? Without giving anything away there, she definitely is an extremely relevant character this season that pertains to just about almost every facet that you could think of. I just want to reassure anyone, if they didn't really like the look or vibe of what they could be bringing in with Rory, if you had the same lens as me initially. Well, yeah, but also don't just think it's like another villainous trope that is just being brought in. Like, it's super fascinating with what they do with her, albeit she does kind of pertain to some of the issues I have with this season as well. It's kind of like, I don't know where to land with this still, and I really, this is why I can't wait to do my spoiler review, because, for example, Rory's story is, it's understandable. It gets convoluted to a sense, and, you know, I feel like where it kind of goes throughout the season, that's where it kind of leaves into some of the more contrived aspects and issues that I kind of have. Like, some of those questions I was saying, like, I was asking about, like, why? Like, I don't really kind of, you know, and they're not even nitpicks. Like, truly, I know the difference between a nitpick and, like, a actual kind of execution issue, and that's where I was kind of going with that. But that's not to say that I don't like the character. It's just, you know, as things progress and, you know, the kettle boils throughout the season, so to speak, and you're getting to that moment where it's the series finale, like it's ending the show, questions are going to be asked like, okay, so the other fans going to like this? How are we going to end this for the fans? This is really big stuff, and I don't think everyone is going to land on the same side of the fence with that. I don't think that's ever going to happen with any TV show on any ending. So specifically with her character being thrown into the mix and how that adds drama and stuff, I just don't necessarily agree with the way they approached it. And to be honest, even though they do present logic as to certain reasons in the story, even with it all being said and done now, I just don't necessarily agree with some of them. It just felt like it was dramatized up until a point of where it just had to be that way to kind of make certain things sting a little bit more in the story, so to speak. But I still kept saying, like, and typing my notes, but logically, like, why is this happening in the story? Why is that happening? I think that's where I'm kind of like a bit indifferent. I don't want to use the word slighted. It's because, as I said, I'm very happy with the way it ended off ultimately, but there's still some story beats that I don't know if I can find myself agreeing with, and it's really going to be super insightful seeing people's responses after it ends with regards to how the main farewell happens and how does it all end for Chloe and Lucifer. But without sounding too negative there, I really don't want to take away from what sentimentality they brought out of me. I wouldn't have said that I was in tears at multiple points if the show still didn't completely strike the utmost chords and heartstrings out of me. I don't know if I made any sense there. Like, even right up until the very end, where I was like, I don't know if I agree with, like, what is going on here. It doesn't really, I mean, I see the sense that you're trying to make to me, but I don't know if I agree with the sense that you're trying to give across. But I was still crying in the ways they did that, because obviously with how this season progresses, is that the farewells are truly most certainly done, and towards the end of the season they definitely do dedicate like an episode or two's worth to that, and that might slow it down a little bit more up until that precipice moment of where certain things may go down and whatnot. But I don't criticize it for that at all, because when you're taking into account a show that has also been revived multiple times, and also it was meant, this is another thing in of itself that I need to address right here and now. This was meant to end in season 5B. Like, season 5, 16 episodes was meant to end. We've got a whole new season now, and that's another thing I just want to take into account when making this review. Was it necessary? Yeah, definitely. And it makes me bloody wonder, and I really, really hope the showrunners come out and say this, because I'm so intrigued. How were you going to end it? Like, was it going to really be the same ending? Because with that in account now, I can kind of look at it in hindsight. They definitely needed these extra episodes because of how much they truly give here. But yeah, man, just thinking about that right off the top of my head, like, I don't see how they couldn't, or how they could have finished it before with everything they kind of do with this season. With also getting another season, it's just great to see the payoffs for all characters, you know, like Maze and Eve. They obviously have arcs this season after last season. I can't give too much away. I was personally very, very happy with the Maze and Eve storyline, things like that. If you're like major fans of these characters, then what I can say is you should love it. I really don't see why you wouldn't. Same with Dan. Things there are really, really interestingly done. I think they give you a good clue in the trailer, but do I feel like Dan's death, do they regress his kind of character in of himself through bringing him back this season? I don't feel like they do. If anything, you kind of get more closure through how they bring him back this season. So like, honestly, double thumbs up there from me, because I really like Kevin Alejandro, and I'm kind of one of those people where it's like, if you die, you should stay dead, but unless it's for an insanely relevant reason. And clearly Dan, with the thing they were tackling last season, not being in heaven, still has some stuff to work through, and the way they kind of spend him in this season and his minutes on screen are very entertaining. Clearly, one thing I love about Lucifer, just a side note tangent here, love shows that blend drama that can make me get teary to comedy. And that's what this show is. And characters like Detective Douche do certainly bring that out. But with him not technically being here, really, then, you know, it also adds, because he's gone, you know, he's gone. But with him here this season, yeah, there is closure to be had, and oh man, I'll just give you a clue. It's one of the things that definitely made me tear up. This is really gonna hit Lucy fans in the gut. It really is. Ella, oh, will she find out or won't she find out? They definitely get into this, obviously, even more. And how do I feel about how that ends up? Actually, I feel like this is another thing. So I was a fan of so much of this season, but it feels just as much of the things I loved about this season. There are also things, not just as much, but I also started to see a few cracks with. And the way they kind of went about Ella's story this season, I did really love it, and ultimately, this is what I mean with like the ending. I felt satisfied, you could say, with how it ultimately panned out. But the execution, once again, I wasn't too on board with the way it just felt kind of rushed with Ella, and I can't really say too much without getting into those specific details. I don't want it to come across as like, oh, it just didn't meet my expectations, so I do not like it, or like, you know, I thought it would go this way, because that's not a reason to not like something. I just feel like the way it's executed, it just feels a bit more synthetic than organic at points. But ultimately, regardless how they get there and where it does go with regards to Ella, I do still feel satisfied, and there are certainly heartfelt moments. And yeah, again, I feel like every character, just like I mentioned with Dan, just like what I mentioned with Lucifer and Chloe, Ella also made me tear up as well with the moments that we get with her, especially moments that fans have been wanting to see for quite some time now. Same can be said for Menadil and Linda. I was happy with things, with how it went for them. Yet again, I can't say anything there, but as far as like a Menadil and Linda, like truly, I feel like they're the two characters I have the least kind of criticism with. I feel like I didn't have an issue with the execution of their stories and the way it kind of fleshed out throughout the season up until, you know, where it not only fleshes out, but then also it has to bring to a close. I felt like for them, it felt, you know, very on par and status quo with the way just the show has been progressing these characters forwards in of itself. Episodes, other than that, you know, we've got like an animated parts to a certain episode. That really was so much better than what I thought it would be. Honestly, like we saw that in the trailer. I believe it's from the same people who make the Harley Quinn animated show. And it was hilarious. Like, honestly, it was really funny. This season, you know, clearly feels like a little bit of a different season. They weren't even supposed to have this season. There's aspects that are different to the characters that they still do try and pay a little bit of homage to, in terms of, for example, Chloe Decker not being a detective, but there's still kind of stories that, you know, the procedural aspect of the show is still in there, but just not as much. There's quite a few other things going on, clearly, with the whole God thing, then a whole new Angel's thrown into the mix, and then they clearly have to say farewell to the show and literally wrap it up more or less definitively. And that's, you know, with that all in mind, the biggest question is kind of as I started off, this is a farewell, and do I feel like fans will like the ending of the show? And the way I can say this is, I think they will, like you will. I think a lot of people will. I did. And what I will be most interested to know is when it's reaching the precipice, you know, the moment where you're kind of clearly vibing, you're getting to the end of the show, you might be on episode 6, 7, 8 or whatever, and at that point I was kind of like understanding where things were going. I was clearly like really watching and eagerly going along. I was really sucked into the story, but I just, you know, with the plot that is introduced to you and what they have to tackle, like Chloe, Lucifer, you know, the aspect of Rory, and what logic they have to kind of work with there, I just don't know if it was, you know, airtight, and that kind of created a bit of an issue with me with the absolute huge monumental kind of overarching kind of plot thing that had to be dealt with. And when I was kind of going along with that, I found myself not being a fan of how it was being executed just through the logic. Just didn't really truly add up to me, and I just kept finding myself asking questions due to it not feeling as airtight. And this could be so interesting to see if people feel the same way as it's going there. And in brackets, again, they do give you logic. I'm not trying to say that they don't. It just still, I kept finding cracks, and I didn't feel like I was being nitpicky. And as I said, the way to ultimately put it is, it kind of rubbed me up the wrong way. I thought, is this really the way it's going to end? And I think that was one of the episode titles of last season. It was just like, is this really? But once again, to repeat myself for the 1000th time, was happy with how it actually ended, but there's still something that I know that it's going to throw quite a few people off. And I feel like there's going to be some people who'll be like, what were you on about? Like, I feel like that was fine. But then there's going to be a lot of people like me who'll be like, okay, I see what they were going for, but it still is, kind of thing. But, oh, no, but the way it ended, okay. But, you know, the way before, like, that's kind of where I'm at. But in terms of just everything else, like, in a proper, like, zoom out kind of situation, now that Lucifer is over, and this is a show that's been in my life, and many of our lives, if you've been here since day one, for many years now. We're on the 6th and final season, and I've been here every single time it's come out. So, looking back on it now, with the show finally being over, I do look back at it with a smile. It didn't necessarily go the way I thought it would, and I don't necessarily agree with the way certain things were executed, and it didn't have to go the way I thought it would. As I said, I don't want to mix up expectations here. That's not where I'm coming at. It's more of a critical kind of like, standpoint with a few decisions that were made for how they achieved the kind of end result. I think that's the best way I can put it. It still is something that I find, you know, the door has been closed, you know, the book is finally closed on that, and it's like, you know, okay, you know, thank you, Lucifer. Like, it was a good time. And this is one way to put it as well. I would not be saying this if they didn't include that final scene in there. And also, technically speaking, the way they end it off, like, you could almost see a special in the future. Not that I ever think this would get revived, because I feel like the way they end it definitely does kind of close the chapter. It most certainly does. But technically speaking, and I don't want to get anyone's hopes up or anything because I'm really not going there. I'm just saying, if they ever did want to do a one-off thing in the future, there technically is some room for that. And that would be really cool. But I don't think everyone would agree that it should happen. Because, as I said, like, the book is truly closed, and it's up to you whether you take, obviously it's your subjective experience, when you take out of that it met every kind of, for lack of a better word, desire you had for a Lucifer series ending. For me, it hit so many sentimental points to the point of where I was in tears, but I'm also indifferent with the execution of how they got to the ending. But to tee it off, the actual ending is very like, yeah, okay, I'm happy now. But still, like, clearly I'm not 100% absolutely happy because of certain writing decisions that were made. Just didn't entirely make too much sense, and we'll dissect that in the spoiler reviews. So I hope you enjoyed this review, guys, and trust me, I hope none of that put anyone off, because this season still, as a Lucy fan, it struck gold in so many areas with me. And, you know, in a complete kind of biased way, if I'm really admitting this here, like, if you're a Lucy fan, you're gonna freaking love it at the end of the day. Like, do you know what I mean? You're gonna love the Dan moments, you're gonna love the Amenadiel moments, you're gonna love the Yellow moments, you're gonna love the Maze moments. But, you know, when I try and remove that off and put my critical hat on, it wasn't the most absolute gilded perfection of an executed season, but I'm still a happy Boba at the end of the day. And we'll talk about this even more more on September 10th, I suppose, with the spoiler review. To be honest, I'm just dying to see the reception of what big Lucifer fans have to say about this. I mean, I think there's always going to be certain fans who will love Lucifer content no matter what they get, but I really want to hear the kind of more as objective as they can approach critique to this season, and whilst still being a big Lucy fan, because, you know, it is interesting me being really happy with it, but also a bit like, about certain things as well. So other than that, ladies and gentlemen, like this video if you did enjoy it. Make sure you subscribe for more content on this channel that I'm sure you're going to enjoy. And of course, links as always are in the top pinned comment of the comment section down below if you want to join my Discord server, so you can talk about Lucifer with me there. We have Lucifer channels, I have Twitter, you can tweet Lucifer things at me there. But thank you so much for watching, everybody. Thank you, all Lucy fans, for supporting the Lucifer content. And who knows, maybe I'll see you Lucy fans in whatever next video you may be watching on my channel next. Goodbye.